Greetings, this is Griff Ruby with Part 8 on my series, Sedevacantism, the Catholic Perspective. Again, I have just gone through describing how, indeed, the traditional Catholics do comprise the Church. All of us traditional Catholics, taken together collectively, alone, comprise the visible unity of the Roman Catholic Church of all history. That church lives in us. More importantly, that church does not visibly live in anybody else. So, what are we to make, though, of the unfortunate case of some who maybe they weren't, I don't know, they didn't think things through, maybe they didn't have a chance to think things through, they got suckered along in the new direction, or more tragically still, were born into it, which now more and more people have never seen when the church was big, when you could find real Catholic churches as big, grand, and glorious congregations on every street corner. Those days are gone, and they will not be back in my lifetime, or the lifetime of anyone now living. Those days are gone. Maybe 500,000 years hence, if history goes so long, that'll be again. But right now, we're in the trenches, and the ability for something like that to exist in the future depends on us keeping the faith in our lives, in our families, in what few congregations we traditionalists really have amongst ourselves. That is the only hope of the church's future. So, but what of those who got suckered out? Now, like I said, perhaps in many cases you can't really assign culpability. God, of course, will have to judge every individual case. I'm sure that there are many out there who might be described as Catholic at heart. They intend to be Catholic, but they're ignorant, invincibly ignorant perhaps, or at least just very, very ignorant of what really it means to be a Catholic, but they want to be Catholic. And maybe they're trying to do their best. And maybe they even manage to abide by the natural law, even if their own organization tells them not to. So, there's some of those like that, I'm sure. God will judge the individual case. And you say, well, could this really happen? It already happened before. Look at England under King Henry VIII. It was the same thing. You had very, very few people keeping the faith and keeping the Catholic Church alive in the British Isles. While meanwhile, the British royalty, having taken over all the cathedrals, all the churches, parishes, religious houses, everything, and basically usurped the Pope's position in England, but most people didn't really seem to care. Even as things started changing in their parish churches, they went along. They were being obedient. It's like, well, my family's gone to this church for how many generations? I've gone here all my life, and I'm going to go here till the day I die. Why, we still got the same priest there who baptized me when I was a baby. That's my church. That's where I go. And that's why they stayed in this new church that King Henry VIII created. So when things started changing, well, of course they changed. It's a different church. How do they celebrate or commemorate that they're a different church? They changed their liturgy. They changed their rules. They changed their theology. Hooker is a different belief than Aquinas. They changed all these things as a commemoration of the fact that they are no longer the Roman Catholic Church. They are a brand new church, the Anglican Church, the Church of England. That's what they were. And yet most people went because you had this great big building that the Catholics built and paid for, by the way. You had the same priests in most cases. You had the same bishops in all cases but one. Who's to say that, who would have thought that you couldn't follow the people that in any other time you should have been able to follow? Your parish priest, he baptized you, and Bishop so-and-so confirmed you, and now all this weirdness is going on. And they tell you it's okay, don't worry about it, go back to sleep, stay spiritually asleep, don't worry about it, everything's all fine here, just keep coming here and you'll be fine. And they did. And only a very, very, very few people cared enough about their faith to say, no, we can't be a part of this. They became the recusants. They had to make do with underground priests. Father Campion is the most famous of those because he was martyred, but there were, I don't know, dozens, hundreds, I'm not sure how many of these priests they actually had being trained in the seminary of Douai, France, and being then sent over to England. So, but these priests were kind of unknown, underground. They kind of had to go from here to there, here to there. They really couldn't have identifiable parishes in the conventional sense of the word, and yet those priests were the real Catholic priests. We'll get more into that later on. So, but again, some of those who went along, God will judge the individual case. It is quite probable that some of them were still Catholic at heart. But as you see, by going to the Anglican Church, they were visibly outside the communion of the Catholic Church. And it's like any other sincere Protestant. There might be some here and there. I'm sure there have to be some who, the fact they're not in the Catholic Church is purely a result of invincible ignorance on their part. Nothing more. No culpability. God will know the individual case, but I think there's some out there. So there's going to be that. But that's all. Visible union of the church, though, is to be found specifically and only in those Catholics who have kept the whole of the faith, who stick to the classical catechisms, the classical popes, councils, teachings, the fathers, the Bible. We stick to it all. The historic magisterium of the church. We traditionalists alone adhere to it. And we therefore alone comprise the visible unity of the Roman Catholic Church. And that visible unity is commemorated very strongly in our retention of the Catholic Mass. More about that in the next.